How's that for a slice of fried gold?
You think this is a fucking costume? This is a way of life.
I'll be back.
Just a flesh wound. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Take your sticking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
Hit record. Roll tape.
Carb wax.
Let's do it.
Roll. Action.
I like to rub soft things.
What?
You know, the real story behind that is I forgot that Sherilyn Flynn was in Of Mice and Men, and then John Malkovich in that movie says that, like, I love to rub soft things, or that's like his thing, right? And then he accidentally kills her when she lets him rub her hair. Yeah, spoiler alert.
Spoiler for Of Mice and Men.
It's where, when Bugs Bunny and the big abominable snowman. That's all from Of Mice and Men.
Yeah, look at that. This is educational. This is what you
This is
came
an
here
educational
for.
podcast.
Yeah, Todd reads books.
Bugs Bunny books, apparently.
Yeah, Bugs Bunny books.
I wonder if David Lynch intended for this, but
Probably
you know, I wanted to live in Twin Peaks. Like,
Yeah.
After a while of watching it, just seemed like a great place to live. Oh, I'm saying that, and then I watched Firewalk with Me, and now I don't want to go anywhere near it. It seems like the worst town.
I would like to go to Snoqualmie,
Yeah.
like the place
Be
where
nice.
they filmed it. Yeah, it seems
That
like a
would be
nice
great.
town. Not actual
Anyway.
Twin Peaks, though. Too many murders. Too many demons.
Demons and
Let's get into
just-
this. Let's go. We got shit to talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, the remix.
Oh,
Well, hello! Welcome to Cinema Shock, the show that digs deep into the stories behind your favorite cult and genre films. We do all the research so that you don't have to. And I'm one of your hosts, Gary Horn.
I'm one of your other hosts, Justin Bishop.
and I'm one of your other hosts, Todd A. Davis. Thank you for joining us for part 2 of our discussion of Fire Walk with Me as part of our new series, David Lynch, Between Two Worlds.
All right, so we have talked already about how Fire Walk with Me came to be, the behind-the-scenes drama, the cast changes, and David Bowie teleporting in to yell about convenience stores. Now it's time to dig into how this thing was actually made. From foggy mountain towns in Washington to a Halloween night on a Los Angeles soundstage, the making of Fire Walk with Me was as strange and vivid as anything that Lynch put on screen. And after that, we're going to get into our own thoughts and analysis, why this film divides people, what it's really doing with Laura Palmer, and why it still matters today.
Also, we could talk about James, finally.
If we
Just
must.
wanna-
Oh, thank God. I
If we
was
must.
worried we wouldn't talk about James.
Hey, at least Evelyn's not here.
Yeah.
Silver lining.
There's
Yes.
your silver lining.
Yep,
Absolutely.
there it is. All right, so we're going to get back behind the camera now. So production on Fire Walk with Me kicked off on September 5th, 1991 in Snoqualmie, Washington, the same area where the series pilot had been filmed. The shoot lasted about 2 months there, with 4 weeks in Washington and another month in Los Angeles. And the production revisited some of the show's familiar locations, but they also branched out a little bit. There was a Seattle building that doubled as the FBI's Philadelphia office. Jacques Renault's cabin was filmed at a real cabin in the Angeles National Forest, which blows my mind because that cabin looks like a movie prop. It's like the creepiest looking cabin you could possibly, like, if a production designer could not have created a cabin any creepier than that. I can't believe it was a real place that they found out in the woods
Yeah.
and didn't get murdered in somehow.
I was going to say, who lives there now?
They also found this weird book bound in human flesh and inked in human blood.
Damn it. I was thinking the exact same thing.
Laura's death scene in the train car, however, was shot on a Los Angeles soundstage, and it was shot on Halloween night, October 31st, 1991, which was the final day of production on Fire Walk with Me. Can you imagine that? Like, spending Halloween night in that spooky-ass train car with strobe lights and fucking Bob Silva's in there? Well, wait, maybe it was just... No, does Bob Silva show up in that scene? I can't remember, but it's spooky. Sherilyn's... She's screaming her lungs out. She's a great
God,
screamer.
that scream.
the best movie scream of all time, honestly.
It really could be.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And at that very pivotal scene when she screams, it is just so freaking impactful.
It sure is. It really is. But they did that on Halloween. I wonder if any trick-or-treaters came by. Got traumatized for life. Now, for Cheryl Lee, the shoot was pretty brutal, at least from an emotional standpoint, because it required her to go to some pretty dark places. And she later admitted that she was so intensely focused on Laura's pain that she didn't really start having her own thoughts again until 2 weeks after filming wrapped. Playing Laura's final days wasn't just a role for her. Like, this was something that clung to her long after the camera stopped rolling.
I don't know when we're supposed to or how we're supposed to get to talking about Cheryl Lee and lumping all the praise. We didn't really do it in the first half of this, so I guess I'm just going to do it now. She is fantastic.
She's so good.
I don't know what I expected out of her, but I loved her in this movie, and I think she's absolutely perfect. And I didn't even know much about her before this series in general, or the last series, and which is sad because she obviously has skills. Incredible skills. Although I think she took herself to like some weird place in this movie that's like not a healthy place to go.
Not a place you want to spend a lot of time, at least. She is incredible in the role. Her performance in this is so big at times that it reminded me of Isabelle Adjani from Possession that we talked about a while back on the show. How big and like over the top and everything she goes. Like when Laura is really like hitting some of those big moments, like that's what it reminded me of. And that's one of the most fearless performances I've ever seen.
Somebody's been peeking at my notes.
Oh, really? No, I wasn't. Yeah? Is that your... let's not spoil your further viewing. I don't know. But that is... I mean, that's what I thought about watching her in this. And there are moments where she's a little... It comes off like a performance, but I don't think it hurts the film necessarily. Like there are moments where she goes so big that it kind of screams acting in big, bold, neons. But she is soul crushing. Like you can feel both sides of Laura. You can see the sweetness in Laura, even though by time we meet her, like she's pretty much on a downward spiral, especially in the second half of the film. But when she's playing sweet, she plays really sweet. But then you get those moments where she's being a horrible person to like to Donna. And the way she plays it, it feels like Laura herself is putting on a performance. Because like I said earlier, Laura almost seems to feel like she's she deserves to be a bad person because of what she's gone through. And it feels like she's even doing a put on at times. Like I'm specifically thinking of this scene. So there's a great moment where she runs in. After she finds out that Bob is Leland, where she runs to Donna's house. And she's like crying and she says, Donna, are you my best friend? And she's like, she needs to hear that somebody is her friend after that. And then later in the film, when she's like getting ready to go out to the roadhouse and she's all vamped up, Donna comes in and Laura will barely talk to her. And Donna even pleads with her. She's like, Laura, I'm your best friend. And it doesn't faze Laura. But you can see this look on Cheryl Lee's face where you can almost see like it does faze her, but she's trying to pretend that it doesn't. She's almost trying to push Donna away. And the way she plays it, I think, is really incredible. I think she's wonderful.
Go ahead, shit on her now, Todd.
So, no.
It really grinds my gears.
I wasn't going to say this just because it's a weird thing that I found, but it was kind of cool for me. There's that one shot where she's her head's tilted up and her eyes and smile keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
The last shot of the movie?
Is that the last shot? Okay.
Where she's in the red room?
I mean,
and the light shining on her?
It's
the final shot of the movie.
Yeah, okay. So much I was like, is her skin about to peel off of her face? What the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
But it made me think, it was like, God, man, I would have given anything for her to play Harley Quinn. That would have been so freaking cool.
It always goes back to Batman or Star Trek with this guy.
Hey, no.
But no, I agree. She is wonderful in that moment. I mean, that's one of the best moments of her entire performance in this film. I also like how she turns on that smile when Bobby's being a dick to her because she just fucked James in the shower or whatever in the locker room. Yeah. But Bobby's like being a dick to her. Yeah. And then she just slowly smiles at him and it completely turns him around. Like he is under her spell.
Yeah. But it's like a fake smile too.
Oh yeah.
And it's like we know really that. Yeah. I'm saying it's like it's crazy how well she does that. That like it's
we know that Laura's faking it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And she's doing it to manipulate Bobby, or
Yeah.
and that's she just I had no idea. I had no idea. I thought she was such a good actress. And I feel like the parts where it even feels like a performance that you were talking about, sometimes I just looked at that as that's the kind of movie this is, sort of.
Yeah.
Like
No, I
this,
agree.
like,
I
noir,
think
like kind of weird,
I imagine David Lynch probably pushed her to go bigger in some of those moments purposely, because it does kind of fit the type of movie that they're trying to make, which is a sort of play on, yeah, like you said, like a noir type movie.
Yeah, I know that we talked a little bit about this earlier, but like that she was longing to come full circle with this character. And I think there was one interview I read where she like said she creatively longed to experience her life force. And I don't know, it's just raw and it's intense. And Grace Zabriskie, in one thing I was looking at, said that who plays her mother, says she gave everything she had in this role and more than she could afford to give. And she spent years coming back from it. But through all of that, I mean, I'm hammering down on this, I guess, because I was blown away by her. And I can't explain how and why. So I checked in on this movie on Letterboxd. And so it pops up. We've got a Letterboxd channel on our Discord, and I guess you must have seen it there, Justin. But like Justin messaged me. He was like, I see you're watching Firewalk with me. I was like, yeah. And you said something about Laura. And I remember telling you, I was like, I questioned at the beginning of Twin Peaks, the series, what the fuck is up with this girl that everybody loves her so much? And I was like, at the end of this movie, I was like, fuck. I love Laura Palmer like everybody else in Twin Peaks does.
And
Cheryl Lee assholes.
And Cheryl Lee is the reason that you feel that
and
way.
it's and I think that that's so perfect that they manage. At least for me, wherever I was in my mental state, like watching her in this role, I came away from it like that did everything it needed to do. That makes me want to see Twin Peaks. Like I would care so much more about the death of Laura Palmer,
Right?
Like watching the series again, just because it is impactful. She was something special. Like she was a force of nature in this movie. Like it just is incredible.
Yeah, 100% agree.
I did want to mention too, just, I don't know whether there's a better place to put it, so I'm going to say it here. Right after filming, I guess Cheryl Lee kept a personal diary, and they published a page from it on here, and I was just going to read that real quick.
Yeah.
So this was just after filming. She says, "Where do I begin? It has been a little over a month since we stopped filming. In a way, it seems like years, and in another, only yesterday. As I sit down now to write this, so many emotions arise. The gift and the experience that you gave me are beyond expression of words. I am aware that your death also allowed an old part of myself to finally die, a very self-destructive part. Through you, I came face to face with my own dark side. I feel as if I have lived a whole lifetime in those 2 short months of filming. I will never forget how, the week after we finished, I suddenly became aware that my thoughts were my own again. My mind and my life had been completely occupied by you. You came to me morning, noon, and night, especially night. That was your time, the darkness of midnight. You continually wove your spirit into my dream world, revealing bits and pieces of yourself, myself, our fears and struggles. The thing I remember most about you, though, Laura, is your loneliness. That loneliness haunted me. Walking back into my empty hotel room by myself each day, left to deal with the fragmented pieces of my own life, your loneliness would fill my room. My prayer is that you are now someplace where you are truly loved and at peaceful rest. Much love and gratitude, me."
Wow. That gave me goosebumps, Gary. That's great.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic when I read it. I almost got like a little tear in my eye. I was like, that's so nuts. And there's a rumor, I'll just throw this out too. I kept seeing rumors that, and I've never seen Inland Empire, but supposedly Cheryl Lee is the inspiration for that, the filming of this movie.
Interesting. Okay. Inland Empire is one that I know the least about because I've only seen it once. Many years ago. So, and I've purposely not rewatched it since we started on this series, even though I bought the Blu-ray that Criterion put out. I've refused to watch it until we get to it in the series because I want to experience it again that way. But
yeah, I don't think it's like a direct,
autobiography
telling of the story, but supposedly it was, what inspired it.
Yeah, that's cool. Wow. So it wasn't just, the cast pushing through tough days. Obviously, there was a lot of heavy stuff as far as that went. The shoot itself was there weren't a lot of incidents. There weren't any great anecdotes or anything like that. It was pretty straightforward. They just shot the movie. Although one thing I found is that there were some rumors that Kiefer Sutherland got into some kind of altercation on set or while filming at least, and ended up with some facial injuries that delayed his scenes. Although his people, the producers on the film, the local police there in Washington, they all denied that it ever happened. But it's kind of one of those oddball Twin Peaks rumors that just won't die.
I imagine he was wrestling the woodsman off camera. That's what I picture.
I mean, Kiefer Sutherland has been known to like be a kind of difficult sometimes, right?
I feel like I've heard about him getting in fights and
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. And I couldn't find much on this either, except a couple of years before this, he and Julia Roberts, for anybody that doesn't remember or know, I didn't remember.
Flatliners.
But yeah, they did Flatliners together and had that Brad and Angelina moment where they fell in love and left their significant others, and they've been together ever since. But they were engaged to get married, and I guess right around this time or a little bit before it, actually, I think it was like June or something, the engagement was called off and everything was falling apart there. So, yeah.
So he was not in a great place.
Yeah,
is what
so
you're
maybe
saying.
he wasn't in the best place at that time. And in one interview with the AV Club that I saw with him, he does say, quote, "I think David Lynch is a very cool guy, and it was kind of a transitional time for me. It was an odd time for me, working wise and personally. I'd gone through a lot that year. I was really grateful to David Lynch that he even thought of casting me in this movie because I was a huge fan of his." Yeah, so I guess I'm saying maybe he was a little ready to throw down.
Yeah, he was primed for it.
Yeah, maybe it's bullshit. Everybody
could
says
be.
it is, but
Yeah,
who knows?
everybody says it is. And honestly, I guess it doesn't matter in the long run. It's just one of those interesting things where it's like, well, it's a rumor. It's just one of those things, that won't go away. Because I read about it in I think 2 or 3 different places, but they all said everyone says this didn't happen, but then when you read that in multiple places, you're like, I kind of think it happened.
Yeah.
Well, meanwhile, David Lynch himself was dealing with a great deal of pain during the shoot because he had a hernia during the entire shoot. And he said it happened because it's a really great story, actually. I think this was in Lynch on Lynch, which is a fantastic interview book of David Lynch. But he said that it happened because he laughed so hard at something Angelo Badalamenti was doing. And Badalamenti later, I think it was he that expanded upon it. Somebody involved in the production expanded upon it, saying that what was actually happening was they were recording the song "The Black Dog Runs at Night," which is a song on the soundtrack. If you hear it, you'll recognize it in the film. But Badalamenti was sort of improvising the vocals on it. They were just kind of playing around in the studio, and he's like, why don't we do this kind of rap thing over this song? I'm just going to make it up. And Badalamenti, being as talented as he is, was able to just improvise it on the spot. So he's doing this like half chanting, half rapping thing over the music, and Lynch is in the like recording booth and just lost it. Like he was just laughing his ass off at whatever Angelo was saying and doing. I mean, imagine, you've seen Angelo Badalamenti. Imagine him rapping. That's a funny image. So he laughed so hard that he injured himself and he got a hernia. And Angelo and David Lynch have both told that story separately. So imagine that you're laughing so hard at your own composer that you injure yourself and then you still go on to shoot what might be the darkest movie of your career.
That's peak Lynch, actually, it feels like.
Yeah.
And to think in interviews, if you get to say that, yeah, so this is about incest and rape. And anyway, sorry, I'm hurt. I've been laughing so hard while I was making this movie.
Like, oh, wait, David, you got to break that down for us a little bit. Let's back it up.
Yeah, that's a little much. But this is the guy that, like, there was another story I saw about him that he saw a car with a license plate that said like 666 on it or something, and he had to drive around to find the Good Mojo license plate.
Yeah. He did a lot of license plate stuff. He would make them like drive around until he found a license plate with his initials on it sometimes. And there was one moment, speaking of driving around, where his assistant, or I guess I don't know if he was his assistant at this point, because he's the assistant director on the film, I believe. He was driving David to set one day, and he sees this lady walking out on the side of the street. And David goes, "Hey, pull over, get that lady's number." And the guy's like, "Well, why do you want me to get her phone number?" And David's like, "Don't worry about it, just go get her number." And so he gets out, gets the lady's number on the side of the street. This is in Los Angeles. I think Los Angeles. And then he gets back in the car and they go on their way. Well, a few days later on set, they're filming in the trailer park, the Fat Trout trailer park. And David Lynch turns to his assistant. He goes, "Hey, remember that lady who I told you to get her number the other day? She's in this scene." And it's the lady that walks out to talk to Harry Dean Stanton that goes, Where's my goddamn hot water? It's that old lady that kind of shuffles, and she's never seen again. But David Lynch just saw her walking on the street, liked how she walked because she has this little like stilted kind of shuffle, and decided to put her in the movie.
No, well,
That's just how he rolls, I guess.
That's he's definitely. I mean, that feels like
he finds inspiration everywhere.
Yeah, that seems like natural for him. Like that's just what he does. So good for him. At least he's keeping with it.
Yeah. Well, as we saw in our previous series, David Lynch often worked with the same cast and crew members over and over throughout his career. Now, Badalamenti, of course, is probably the one whose career is most closely tied to Lynch's. He worked on most of his movies. But Fire Walk With Me also saw Lynch reteaming with several other key behind-the-scenes crew members, including Ron Garcia, his cinematographer, who had also served as the director of photography on Twin Peaks, the whole TV series. So that kind of ensured that the film would visually inhabit the same world as the show. The film also saw him once again working with casting director Johanna Ray, who also serves as an associate producer on this film, as well as his production/costume designer, because she did both, Patricia Norris, and both of them have worked with him almost since the beginning. Now, in our previous series on Lynch, we also talked about some of his romantic partners, like not in a gossipy way, but because his relationships were often deeply tied to his work as an artist. One of the most important of these was Mary Sweeney, who Lynch was seeing at the time that Fire Walk With Me was being made. And Sweeney's association with Lynch stretched back several years. While studying cinema at NYU, she discovered an affinity for editing, and she worked a string of jobs as an assistant editor and a sound editor after she graduated from college in 1980. And then in 1983, she landed at George Lucas's Sprocket Systems, which is now known as Skywalker Sound in Northern California. And it was there that she met Lynch's longtime editor, Dwayne Dunham, who later hired her as an assistant editor on Blue Velvet. And that's where she first met David Lynch, in November of 1985, when he came to Sprocket for post-production on Blue Velvet.
I got to tell you, if I was a filmmaker, I mean, even as a podcaster, if I could find somebody that just loved editing, I would go for it immediately.
Well, by the spring of 1987, she had relocated to Los Angeles to work on editing a television version of Blue Velvet, which was a contractual obligation, but you've seen Blue Velvet. No small task. How the hell do you make a TV-friendly version of that movie at all? Like,
right.
Without cutting out huge chunks of the movie. How is Dennis Hopper's voice even in the movie?
I was going to say there
every
is
line
no
dubbed
Dennis
over?
Hopper. Dennis Hopper is not in this film.
Yeah. So that was her first like full-on editing job, I guess. Then in 1989, she was brought on as a script supervisor and the first assistant editor on Wild at Heart. A year later, she joined Twin Peaks as the script supervisor for the first episode of season 2, and soon after as the editor of season 7. Now that, for those keeping up, that's Lonely Souls. That's the Lynch-directed hour that revealed the identity of Laura Palmer's killer. That's a big episode. So obviously Lynch wanted that episode in capable hands, and he trusted Mary Sweeney to handle it. So it tells you how much he trusts her. Now, over all this time they've been working together, the two grew closer. They eventually entered into a romantic relationship. They wouldn't marry until 2006, believe it or not. And they were only married for like a few months. But before that, they remained together for more than 15 years. And they actually had a son together, Riley Lynch, who was born just a few days after Fire Walk With Me made its debut at Cannes, like a week later.
Weirdly, though, the only thing is he trusted her with Lonely Souls, but James was actually the person who killed Laura Palmer originally, but she lost that cut. And so
she said, "Nope,
roll this way."
Well, it was Mary Sweeney who helped Lynch shape the mountain of footage that he shot for Fire Walk With Me, over 5 hours worth, down to a comparatively lean 2 hours and 14 minutes. Now, Lynch contractually had final cut on this film, so he could have made it 5 hours long, I guess, if he wanted to. But he always has maintained that he didn't trim the film just for runtime's sake. He did admit that he's like, I got to be realistic about how long a movie can be. I can't make a 5-hour movie. Like, he's not stupid. He knows that. So together, he and Sweeney zeroed in on Laura Palmer's story, and most of the deleted material involved supporting characters from the TV series, which Lynch later said were too tangential to keep the main story progressing properly. He also said that ideally someone who has never seen the series should still be able to sit down and watch the film on its own, and that it could stand as a complete story about Laura. Now, here's the thing. I love this movie, but I think anyone going in blind is going to be very confused. I mean, hell, even people who have seen the TV show can sometimes be very confused by it. Now,
I'm relieved to hear you say that.
I mean, it's true. I mean, I'm not going to pretend. Now, I do think you could probably watch Fire Walk with Me and experience it as a standalone film. I don't know that you would necessarily keep up with everything, but I think it could work because it does still stand as a startling portrayal of trauma. But I think having watched Twin Peaks, you're going to get a much richer viewing experience. You're going to get a lot more out of it. Yeah, you could watch it without seeing the show, but I would not recommend it. Because I also think watching it enhances subsequent viewings of the TV series.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I would also never say watch the movie first. Always watch the series first.
I think 100% you should do that. I even saw like on Letterboxd, I was looking through people I follow's like reviews or something, and like I think it was like Devin or something had watched the movie and wrote a review, but he was like, I didn't rewatch Twin Peaks before this, so I cannot give it a star rating or something like that.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I was thinking about earlier when we were talking about like the mythology stuff. I was thinking to myself that that's got to play so weird if you were like watching just the movie for the first time.
You've never seen Bob before, and the Red Room and all that. Like, what the hell would you make of all that?
On one hand, you could hate on it for that if you were analyzing it as a film on its own. But if you look at it like, well, this is made for people that are following this story, then I guess it works. Like it's fine. That you're only getting like bits and pieces. You have more context than someone else would that has not seen it.
Yeah, I agree. So in early 1992, New Line Cinema steps in and they bought the North American distribution rights for about $6 million. And they did that without ever seeing the finished cut of the film, which they might have wished they had, maybe. But CB ended up keeping the rights in France. Spelling still held on to most of the international markets, but New Line would be handling the U.S. release. And the big unveiling came a few months later, in May of 1992, when Fire Walk with Me premiered in competition at the Cannes Film Festival. And it did not exactly go smoothly. Reports from the time mention a mix of boos, applause, hoots, and whistles. Lynch later described the experience as horrible, saying that he could feel the hostility in the room before the film even started. Now, one quote from Lynch, I think it's in that Lynch on Lynch book, indicates that I guess CB's founder, which was this construction magnate named Francis Bouygues, French guy, obviously, but he was pretty unpopular in France. So the French attendees to the festival were already sort of predisposed to not wanting to like anything he produced. So they were ready to go into this movie hating it because he was involved. That's what Lynch kind of indicates. He doesn't flat out say that, but he definitely implies it. And that's the only place I've read that, but felt like it was worth saying. But the audience was pretty hostile towards it for the most part. Now, I think Robert Ingalls has said that he didn't hear any boos, but David Lynch insists that there were. Critics were not much kinder to the film. A lot of critics saw it there at the Cannes Film Festival and started reviewing it. And Roger Ebert called it shockingly bad. Now, he hasn't been a big fan of Lynch really from the beginning, except for Elephant Man, I think. Janet Maslin dismissed it as disastrous and brain-dead grotesque.
Do you think any of the executives from New Line were just like,
God damn,
maybe they didn't even know. They were like, bro, listen, we just got the new David Lynch joint. We dropped Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles last year. That was hot. And now we got one called Fire Walk with Me. Sounds exciting. We're on a run now.
Yeah, we're on a roll. Quentin Tarantino, who was at the festival to show Reservoir Dogs, his first movie, he piled on the hate too. He said, and he was a fan of David Lynch before this, but he said the film made him think that Lynch had, quote, disappeared so far up his own ass that he didn't want to see another Lynch movie for a long while. Now,
I mean,
Todd's never felt more justified than right now.
And these people aren't dummies. Ugh, okay. I to be honest, I read that and it's just like, oh God. Okay. All right. Shockingly bad is, oh, wow. That's
shockingly bad.
Yeah, cinema shockingly bad.
I love that I said we should start doing this joke and Justin like brushed it off, but now he's running with it.
Yeah. It hurt to say it, but yeah.
I love a running gag.
Brain dead grotesque, like, woof. But like Quentin Tarantino, you take the critics with a grain of salt, but somebody like Tarantino coming at. That's
Yeah.
pretty hot. That's a
Yeah,
that's a
but
pretty hot take.
I love
Like,
Tarantino. Like I love listening to his takes on movies, but I do not always agree with them. I will say that. I mean, I listen to his podcast, and sometimes I'm like, "What are you talking about, dude?"
I will say David Foster Wallace, who writes a lot about Lynch, he did do, and one thing I was reading about him, Lynch versus Tarantino, just to put those two guys up against each other. He said, quote, Lynch is an exponentially better filmmaker than Quentin Tarantino.
Wow.
For unlike Tarantino, D. Lynch knows that an act of violence in an American film has, through repetition and desensitization, lost the ability to refer to anything but itself. A better way to put what I just tried to say, Quentin Tarantino is interested in watching somebody's ear get cut off. David Lynch is interested in the ear.
Ah, that's a direct like reference to Blue Velvet. That's good, honestly. I mean, I don't fully agree. I think Tarantino's a fantastic filmmaker. I wouldn't even try to say like who's better between the two because I think they make vastly different types of art. I don't know. That's like comparing, I don't know, like somebody who paints like super realistic portraits, but like incredibly well to, a cubist or something. Like they're both valid art, but one's not necessarily better than the other. You might like one better than the other, but that doesn't mean that one is a better filmmaker than the other. But that's still a good take. David Foster Wallace turns out intelligent guy. smarter than us.
Well, and I thought it was an interesting note for sure, but yeah, I'm with you. I don't even think I would normally ever compare the two.
Yeah, honestly. It's kind of hard to compare those. Well, despite the bad press, New Line stuck with their plan to release the film in August that year. But they didn't do the movie any favors. They refused to pre-screen it for critics, which is almost always a bad sign. And when it did hit theaters, reviews were overwhelmingly negative. Audiences didn't show up either. The movie bombed in the U.S., grossing just over $4 million against an estimated $10 to $12 million budget. It was such a disappointment that CB scrapped plans for any additional Twin Peaks films. But, and this is important, the film actually did much better overseas. In Japan, Twin Peaks was a phenomenon at the time. I don't know if you guys have seen stuff about the Twin Peaks phenomenon in Japan, but it's pretty wild. Like fans were literally signing up for satellite TV subscriptions just so that they could watch the show. So when Fire Walk with Me opened there in May of 1992 under the title The Last 7 Days of Laura Palmer, people lined up. It did pretty well there. And by early August, it had grossed about $2.9 million in Japan alone. They were even holding mock funerals for Laura Palmer to promote the release. Like this is like stuff that you only see in Japan, but it's pretty wild to think of the contrast between there and here.
It's the next level right there. Also, I kind of dig the name Last 7 Days of Laura Palmer.
Yeah, I like that name too.
Well, yeah, the original screenplay is subtitled Fire Walk with Me, The Last 7 Days of Laura Palmer, or I think it actually says Teresa Banks and The Last 7 Days of Laura Palmer on the copy that I read.
I was reading how it was apparently most popular with Japanese women. The cinematographer, Ron Garcia, he said something in one interview about how he felt like Japanese women appreciated seeing Laura as an acknowledgement of their suffering in a repressive society, is how he put it. It's kind of interesting. But yeah, Japanese women love Twin Peaks.
Yeah. And in France, where Lynch has a pretty big following, pretty strong following, the movie didn't bomb there either. It did fairly well. There was a French filmmaker named Jacques Rivette who called it the craziest film in the history of cinema and said he left the theater floating 6 feet above the ground. So they were digging it.
It just shows you how globally impactful the whole thing was. And I think people still forget like how huge the TV show was worldwide. Like how we've talked about a number of times, like just Gorbachev wanting the president to reveal Laura Palmer's killer to him.
Yeah.
And I even saw a cool story where Badalamenti got called to go work with Paul McCartney. Because
I heard him tell that story.
Yeah. McCartney was a fan of Twin Peaks, and you could see them in. There's a documentary about Paul McCartney called "Moving On," and they're in it together at one point. There's a clip with them. They work on a song called "It's Raining in London," and I don't think it's ever been officially released. But Badalamenti says Paul told him this story too that I thought was funny. He says, "Not long before we met, Paul McCartney told me that he'd been asked to perform for the Queen for her birthday celebration. And McCartney said when he met her, he started to say, 'I'm honored to be here tonight, Your Majesty, and I'm going to play some music for you.' And the Queen cut him off and said, 'I'm sorry, I can't stay. It's 5 to 8 and I have to go watch Twin Peaks.'"
She needed to know. I love that story. That's great. So obviously there were fans. I'm not. I mean, we know the show's a global phenomenon, but the movie as well did have its fan. Like, not everybody dismissed it, not even here in the States. Angelo Badalamenti's score won Best Music at the Saturn Awards and at the Independent Spirit Awards. Sheryl Lee picked up nominations at both of those ceremonies for her performance in the film. So, while a lot of critics were tearing it down, there were at least a few voices recognizing that Lynch and his cast were doing something remarkable here. But the question, I guess, is what do we make of it? I think we already kind of have an idea of what Todd thinks because he's put all his cards out on the table already. Yeah. But this is one of those movies that inspires very strong opinion. And I think this is a good time for us to kind of dig in and talk through our own reactions before we get into how the film's reputation has changed over time. So, Gary, this was your first experience with this. You had watched the show before, at least most of the way through, at least through the Laura Palmer stuff, but you had never gotten around to Fire Walk with Me.
No, never watched it. Well, because I never finished Twin Peaks, and I always felt like I would be missing out on something. Yeah, so I just never watched it. I think
you probably would with some of the Lodge mythology and stuff like that. I guess it helps to watch all the way through season 2. I
think if we'd watched it any earlier, I'd be weirded out by the movie a little bit. But I think because we've already done so much Lynch and so much Twin Peaks, I was able to like roll with it, like the thing, what he was trying to do. And so I hate to be disagreeable with Todd, but I think this is maybe one of my, if not my favorite David Lynch thing.
Wow.
Actually, so far. So I love it, but mostly laying solely on Sheryl Lee. Like
she's so good.
I just think something about her in this movie, like, just won me over big time. Mm-hmm. And I love this movie. And I mean, it's a little dark. I get it. And I feel like it's a weird one to say it's your favorite. So maybe that's why I'm hesitant to talk like that, just because it's like, it's such nasty subject matter.
But it's effective.
But I just thought that's it. I just think it's very effective. Like I really felt for her.
Yeah.
It made me feel for her. Like I felt sad by the whole movie. So that's a weirder way to put it. Like, I really liked it because it made me so sad. It was just, but that's what it was. It like, just watching her spiral, just, I was just drawn into it personally. And her whole torment just made me just hate everything. But that was what the movie was trying to do.
You're right. I mean, I think that's what David Lynch wants you to do, is he wants you to feel for Laura Palmer, because he feels for Laura Palmer. He wants you to understand what she went through. Now, you quoted this earlier, Gary, but you said, Lynch, one time he once described Fire Walk with Me as his cherry pie present to fans of the show, however, one that's wrapped in barbed wire. And I think that's pretty dead on. Like, he knew this movie was going to alienate people, fans of the show, at least some of them. But Lynch is an uncompromising artist. Like, when he feels like something needs to be made and it needs to be made a certain way, he's going to do it whether the audience is ready or not. I mean, and that's not to say he doesn't care about critical evaluation or how much the audience enjoys a film or appreciates a film, because he has said before how disappointed he was and like how people felt about Dune. But on Dune, his hands were tied. He felt more disappointment with the reaction here because he felt like this was the exact movie he wanted to make, and people didn't quite get it all the time. But he was still true to his voice as an artist, as he always is, other than on Dune, probably. So I think he probably also knew that people would come around on it eventually. Now, one of the things that makes him so fascinating, or his films, is how full of contradiction these worlds that he creates are. Like, he is drawn to the grotesque and the terrifying, but also to the beautiful and tender. And I think Laura Palmer is the ultimate contradiction. Like, she is sort of that whole idea personified. She's this radiant homecoming queen who delivers Meals on Wheels and helps tutor Johnny Horn. And she's also a drug addict. She's a sex worker. She is a deeply troubled young woman. Like, she is light and dark in the same body. And I feel like that's why he loves her so much, because that is sort of the theme that drives most of his films. The idea of light and dark, the goodness and the bad coexisting. And Laura is literally the walking embodiment of that.
That's a good way to put it, actually. Like, it's and that's why I said earlier that I used to love Twin Peaks, like the town. Like, I thought the town would be so cool to live in, but then after this, I was just like, oh God, like, everything is so miserable there.
But just, everything's miserable everywhere.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
And Twin Peaks is just no different. And something we've talked about before on the series, both in our Twin Peaks watch along series and especially on our last series we did on Lynch, is that he never hands you an answer. Like he doesn't want to solve his own mysteries. He doesn't want you to try to solve them. He wants you to feel these movies intuitively, not pick them apart like a puzzle. His films are not riddles to be solved. They're experiences to be lived. So what Fire Walk with Me means, to me, might not be the same as what it means to you, but that's kind of the beauty of it. I mean, that's art. So, Todd, I wanted to ask you. I know this is you. Obviously, you've had a different journey with Lynch than Gary has.
Yeah.
And I know that kind of thing drives you nuts a little bit. Like I feel like you always want the pieces of the plot to click into place, and Lynch is not at all interested in that. He's more in it for an emotional experience. So I'm curious how, like, I mean, I think we know your thoughts on the film, but is your so what I seem to feel is a dislike of the film because everything doesn't click into place neatly?
I really wanted this to expand on something that furthered what we had seen over 2 seasons of Twin Peaks. And that final shot of Coop, blood running down his face, laughing hysterically at the camera. And again, at that point, we had come so far from the murder of Laura Palmer that I was looking for this to be expanded on in a meaningful way as sort of a, hey, thanks for hanging in there. The network wasn't behind us, but you folks that watched every episode were, and we appreciate it. And we didn't get that. So I was looking at this because I am not a big Twin Peaks fan. I was trying to look at this as someone who may be a big Twin Peaks fan. And I think if someone took that journey and spent their hard-earned dollars to sit there and watch this, I'd be disappointed. I don't think we learn anything about Laura Palmer that isn't thoroughly covered in the show. And personally, the very first thing I thought of when the credits started rolling was Boondock Saints.
Gross.
And if you remember what I said about Boondock Saints, it felt mean. It just felt like, I'm going to show you this troubled girl's horribly traumatizing final days, and we'll just end with her death, and that's it. And the big thing that I keep coming back to is just there was Twin Peaks was so packed to the rafters with plot that for us to have this movie, it's like saying, hey, there's a new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie coming. And it's a coming of age story about the boy who dropped his turtles down the sewer. Like, why do I care about that? You've told me everything. I've watched the effect of Laura Palmer on the town of Twin Peaks, on seemingly everyone in Twin Peaks, the ripple effects of the death of Laura Palmer. I don't have to see it again. I know that. We know we know all of these things. We know all of these things. And the stuff that was the most interesting was there in the first 30 minutes and didn't really seem to be expanded on, like I said, in any sort of meaningful way. So yeah, I'm disappointed.
Man, that is like completely the opposite of how I felt about it. Like for instance, I mean, to the first part of your point about what you wish you would have gotten versus what they made, I understand that. Like, I think it would have been very weird if I didn't know that the return was coming, if like that was the end of the show and then you chose to do this, and then it was like, man, that would be kind of a bummer way to go. But I knew going in that that's not what this was. Right. It wasn't a continuation. It was the story of Laura Palmer. So I think like Justin says, sometimes they just able to meet him where he was on that part. Like that's what you're getting. You're getting the story of Laura Palmer. So I'm already prepped for that. You said mean, and I've seen movies that I think are mean. And to me, mean is if there were all of this abuse and torture, and it was with complete disregard of that character that's receiving it. With Laura, you're made to feel what she's feeling, to see what she's going through, and to understand how she's spiraling out of control and how her mind is just breaking down through the whole process. So it's not about the things being done to her so much as you're seeing how it impacts her. So you're supposed to be feeling that with her, what that's like. And so if it weren't that, yeah, it'd be really mean to me. But because it wasn't that, like, I feel like one of the really talented things that David Lynch has going on, or one of the really big things that he has for him here, is that, yeah, I did know all of it. I did see all of Twin Peaks, but everything that you heard about Laura Palmer is, you just heard it. They said it. You know she's dead. You see her body at one point, but like, why she had such an impact and the trauma that she went through. Like, trauma is such this like intangible thing. Like, how do you express that? How do you feel? How do you make somebody feel that? How do you understand? Because whatever's happening to you in your life, you could tell me all about it all day, but I can't experience that same thing. I could try to put myself in your shoes, but it's a little bit different, you telling me versus like me going through it. And I feel like the point of this movie was you're going through it with her. Like, you're supposed to be kind of experiencing her last 7 days and what it was like leading up to the end. And for me, I don't know how he does it, but going back to what I was saying, David Lynch, one of the greatest things about him to me right now is I watch this movie, and whatever magic he has, I felt like I felt it. Like I was watching this happen to her and I couldn't help her, and it felt helpless, which is exactly how she felt the entire time, watching everything around her crumble, and she can't stop it. It's out of control, and it's never going to stop until she does. And that worked on me. I felt like I was with her on that journey.
I feel like because the way we are presented things in the narrative, especially in season 2 of Twin Peaks, that the bigger issue here is actually this demon that's possessing people and the threat to our reality. I'm not saying that what Laura went through wasn't horrible, but this is what's been presented as this is the bigger threat. This is what has happened. And now we've got our main guy who's been possessed by this demon or whatever it is. Like, our reality hangs in the balance.
Well,
the death of Laura Palmer set this off, but now we've come so far from that. She was the first domino, but now we are here at this bigger thing. This wasn't the story I was here for.
Well, I get that, Todd, and a lot of people when the movie came out felt that way. A lot of fans of the show, especially more casual fans, felt that way. They felt like this was not the story they wanted to see. But the thing is, like, Fire Walk with Me was never meant to wrap up series cliffhangers. That was not the director's intent. And if that's the lens that you bring into it, then yeah, you're bound to feel disappointed. But Lynch had no interest in making a greatest hits package for Twin Peaks or a feature-length epilogue. He wanted to make a movie about Laura Palmer. If he had tried to make something else that he didn't feel like he needed to make, then it wouldn't have turned out good. But it matters because Laura was never just a plot device. I mean, the show did treat her that way at times. She was this dead girl that everyone talked about but never actually got to see. Fire Walk with Me flips that on its head. It forces you, like Gary said, it forces you to live with Laura, not just speculate about her. Cheryl Lee herself, we quoted her earlier. She said, the film let her come full circle with the character because now she's not just a photo or a memory. She's a living, breathing human. So if you came in looking for closure on cliffhangers, obviously you're not going to find it, but that's completely intentional. Lynch was less interested in tying bows and more interested in giving a voice to the silenced victim at the center of his story. Now, that's not a film that is going nowhere, like you implied. That's the core of what Twin Peaks was always about. That kind of brings me to, I think, the biggest difference between this film and the earlier Lynch films that we talked about. In movies like Blue Velvet, or even in the Twin Peaks show, but in, like, I'm going to stick with Blue Velvet because it's a good example. We're kind of watching the suffering from the sidelines. Like, we're in the closet with Jeffrey watching Valerie get abused, right? In Fire Walk with Me, we're right in the middle of it. We cannot escape it. We're not watching it, we're experiencing it. And it's relentless, and that can be overwhelming, especially if what you loved about Twin Peaks was the quirky humor and the kind of supernatural X-Files thing that it had going on towards the end of the second season. But Lynch makes it pretty clear right from the start with the smashing of that television that that's not what we're getting this time. We're not getting funny characters. There's no Andy with tape all over his face to give us a bit of levity, because Laura never had that levity, at least not at this point in her life. Lynch, in this movie, Lynch is not interested in the lighter side of Twin Peaks. He's interested in the darkness. And by focusing on that, he forces us to see Laura differently. Because on the show, she was just like, she was an object. She was a corpse wrapped in plastic. But here she is a living, breathing person. And we're forced to sit with her trauma and her abuse and her unraveling. And to me, that's the film's biggest accomplishment. I feel like I'm trying not to repeat what Gary said, but I feel like we're kind of on the same page as far as that goes. But watching this, it's raw and it's uneasy and it is very disorienting. It's maybe close to what it feels like to being terrorized by someone who should have been your protector. The movie makes you feel that way. And I think that's what makes this film indispensable to the world of Twin Peaks, because it recontextualizes the entire series. Because the show danced around a lot of stuff because it was on network TV. It danced around the whole incest thing. It opened that Pandora's box, but it softened the blow with the whole Leland was just a vessel for Bob angle. But Fire Walk with Me kind of muddies that up a little bit. Like, Leland is culpable. The line between where he ends and where Bob begins is messy and ambiguous, and purposely so, because that's a lot more disturbing and a lot more compelling. And I think that's why a lot of people rejected the film in 1992, because that was a hard watch. And it's why people are still rejecting it now. In Lynch on Lynch, Chris Rodley, I wrote down this quote, but he mentions that the movie reminded people that the central story of Twin Peaks was always one of incest and filicide. The TV show gave viewers the comfort of metaphor, but the film forces them to confront that horror directly. And that's not an easy thing to experience. Think back, there's a line that Cooper says in season 2, after we find out who Laura's killer is. And Truman is sort of struggling with the idea of Bob possessing Leland. And Cooper says to him, he says, "Harry, is it easier to believe that a man would rape and kill his own daughter? Is that any more comforting?" And Fire Walk with Me refuses to give us that comfort. Like, when Laura sees Bob behind her dresser looking for her diary and then realizes that it's her father, that line between monster and man collapses. This is no longer a figment from her dreams. And in that moment, the audience kind of has to collapse with it. Like, you have to feel bad. This is not a feel-good movie. It's a feel-bad movie for the most part. Like, that breakdown when you see, right after this, after that scene when Laura runs outside and then she sees her father walk out of the house, you see her break. Like, that breakdown where she's like laying in the grass trying to kind of hide from him. She's broken, and she's broken for the entire movie from that point on. She's been on the verge the whole movie, but at that point, like, that is the point of no return for her. She is, or at least she feels, I think that's important to say, she feels hopeless, which contributes to her whole downward spiral. You get scenes like the dinner scene is very disturbing. So you see that, like, these things have been happening at home. I'm talking about the scene where the wash your hands moment where Leland snaps to Sarah, like, how do you know what she likes? It's one of the scariest moments in the film because it feels so real. And part of that's because Ray Weiss is just incredible in the film. Him and Sheryl Lee both, I think, deserve every accolade for this film. But I get I understand your frustration with it. I just come at it from a completely different angle, because you're definitely not alone in that. A lot of people feel frustrated that this doesn't continue the show. I think this enriches the show.
What are we supposed to do with this?
You're supposed to experience it. You're supposed to, like, what do you mean? What are you supposed to do?
Am I being punished? Am I
No,
being punished for
you're supposed
for
to be
being a fan of Twin Peaks?
You're supposed to be feeling empathy for a character who's experiencing the worst thing that a person can possibly experience. That's what you're supposed to do with it.
You mentioned earlier, well, and what Justin said, I echo that. I totally get where you're coming from, like wanting a sequel. I still want to see more out of where it goes from here with Twin Peaks, but this movie, again, I knew that it's not that. So I pushed that aside. That's not even an option to think about. And I'm not saying like Justin said, a lot of people feel this way, but for me, I was just like, all right, well, this is not an option to think about.
What you're getting.
Like,
you didn't go in thinking you were going to get a sequel.
And so for your point about, the biggest thing in the world being a demon or whatever it is possessing these people, being the biggest threat, not to Laura. Like it's not, I mean, it is a threat to Laura, but Laura is surrounded literally by every man in her life being trash, treating her terribly. The only people that could potentially help her are Donna and fucking James, who is too stupid to do anything. And I say that like as a joke, but also I was so pissed off at him at the very end of the movie.
Where he lets her run off.
When he lets her off, like, oh, she belongs to the woods now, I guess.
Yeah.
And he just rides off with his stiff legs on the side of his motorcycle. And I'm like, you fucking idiot.
That is how he describes it in the series. And like when he's being interviewed by the cops, like that scene plays out exactly as he describes it.
Yeah, and it's just, and you're frustrated because you're like, all these people are letting her go. Like Donna seems to be the only person trying to get in there and help, but every other person in her life is a threat to her and hurting her, and she just has nowhere.
Or is willfully ignorant.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah. So like that would be your mom, but I mean, from Bobby to, I mean, and then Leland, just, I think it makes it even darker to know that, like, I think you put it as like where Leland ends and Bob begins or whatever. I mean, you're watching this, and even without Bob, I get the impression that Leland's just a fucking dickhead.
Yeah.
And he's horrible to begin with. And so even if she could get through to her father, it doesn't matter. And I don't know that he's not the exact same person either way.
Right.
And I don't know.
I mean, it is a prequel, so that to me, that's what makes, honestly, that's part of what makes it hit so hard, is because I mean, prequels are hard because we know the endings. And a lot of times the tension is killed because the ending is set. I mean, the Star Wars prequels are easy to beat up on, but that's true of them. Like, we know what's going to happen to Anakin, so there's not a lot of tension in his journey because we know where he ends up. But Lynch somehow manages to flip that problem on its head, because the tragedy here isn't what happens. Like, we know that this movie's going to end with Laura dead. We know that she's going to get murdered. The tragedy in this film is in how it happens, and watching Laura's world unravel as she moves towards the fate that we already know that she's headed towards. The mystery's not buried anymore. It's all there in plain sight. And by following her very last week, Lynch gives the victim a voice. Like, for the first time, Laura isn't just a catalyst for other people's stories. Like, she is the center of her own story. And I think that's important. And in doing that, I think Fire Walk with Me deepens the series itself, because I think if you rewatch the show after you've watched this film, every mention of Laura, every clue about her suffering carries more weight. In that third episode, I think it was the third episode, where they're at the funeral, and Bobby, I hate Bobby most of the time, but Bobby was right. And what he said at that funeral, he said that they all killed Laura Palmer. It wasn't just Leland. They didn't know who it was at the time, but he said that everyone in that town ignored the signs. Everyone in that town was complicit, just as anyone is complicit when they ignore the victims of abuse. One writer I was reading, a scholar named Randy Davenport, they put it really well, and said that Twin Peaks, this is a quote, Twin Peaks demands that its audience understand not just that sexual violence occurs, but that our culture tolerates a range of practices that authorize violence against women. And I think that's what this film forces us to sit with. That's what it forces us to confront. And Lynch himself even admitted, he said the story gets heavy after a while. because that was the point. He doubled down on the depravity, the dream sequences, the horror. I mean, this movie is often it's often categorized as a horror film. And he did it to dismantle the show's mythology so that he could let that story take him into a much darker terrain. So yeah, I mean, I get it. I get why this movie is a tough pill to swallow now and back in 1992. It's hard to watch because it strips away all the cozy, quirky charm of Twin Peaks, and it just plunges you into 2 hours of trauma and grief. And for some people, that's unbearable. For
It's a lot to take.
Yeah, it's a lot to take.
And I was thinking about, like, you know, if it's getting to the end, like, you know what's going to happen. I know you said, what am I supposed to feel, Todd? Or like are you supposed to feel like punished or something like that? But I look at it like, if I watched Titanic and I know where that movie's going and all of these people are gonna die, and it's like the goal of the movie, I think, is to get you to feel for those people, and it matters when they die or whatever. But and I only compare them just because the end result. But like, this movie is like, there's a heavier aspect to it. And not only are you supposed to like care about the character, but you're feeling what they're going through before they get there. Just
Well,
that,
it's a deeply empathetic film.
yeah.
It's a deeply empathetic look at Laura Palmer because it is forcing you to feel what she feels, which is not pleasant. I mean, I get that. I get that it's not fun and it's not pleasant and it's not a bowl of, a barrel of monkeys, but it's
And if he had done Twin Peaks and tried to tell this story, so again, we accept that he's telling this story. This is what he wants to do. He tries to include all that Twin Peaks bullshit. I think you're disrespecting the story. Like, this is not whimsical or quirky. There's nothing about this that's fun.
yeah.
This is supposed to be, I'm not going to say cinema shocking, but it is supposed to be. It is supposed to be shocking and uncomfortable, and I think you would be disrespecting the trauma of people that would have experienced something like this to like make a joke about it,
Yeah.
like during the film, like, oh, but over here, Andy's like, he fell through a floor or something. It's like, it doesn't work here.
It doesn't work. And there are so many women who have come forward who have talked to share, who have come to like thank Cheryl Lee. She said this in many interviews where victims of abuse have come to her and thanked her because they're like, that is like, I went through what you went through. Thank you for showing it honestly on film. I've got a book that I've been reading called The Ghost of Laura Palmer that's completely written by women, and it's edited by a woman who experienced abuse as a child from a family member, and she's been through this. And obviously, I'm not in a position to say that I know what they've been through, but they're saying, when I look at this film, I see myself. And I think that's important. I think that's very important. I think Lynch's ultimate goal with this movie was to make you feel empathy for someone who's gone through something like this, and it's to show us the real story that's been hiding under the surface through both seasons of Twin Peaks. Was that everything underneath that quirkiness is just fucking filth, and it's not good, not for Laura. But here's the thing: over the years, the film's reputation has completely changed. Like, people had a hard time with it in 1992. But what was once dismissed as a failure has slowly been reappraised as one of Lynch's masterpieces and maybe even the key to the entire Twin Peaks universe. So by the late 90s, a few critics were already sticking up for Fire Walk with Me. Steve Erickson at LA Weekly, for example, called Laura's story remarkable and disturbingly authentic. And by the early 2000s, more voices joined in. Slant Magazine praised it, eventually putting it on their list of 100 essential films. Mark Kermode, who you mentioned earlier, Gary, but he told Lynch directly that a movie once considered a disaster was now being called a masterpiece. So the tide was turning. Now, part of that reevaluation has to do with timing. Back in 1992, people wanted Twin Peaks quirk and answers, not 2 hours of unrelenting darkness. We've talked about this. And the movie felt a little bit like a betrayal. But as time went on and as conversations around trauma, abuse, and mental health became less taboo, critics and fans started to see what Lynch was really doing. What felt unwatchable in the 90s came to be recognized as one of his most empathetic and harrowing works. And in the wake of the Me Too movement, its raw portrayal of abuse and survival resonates even more strongly.
It was ahead of its time, I think. Like critics, I saw some reviews that said like pointless at best, sadistic at worst. And what if there was a review, I forget who did it, but it said it's not the worst movie ever made, it just seems to be.
Yeah, I saw that one too. I think it was in like the New York Times or something like that.
Yeah, ouch.
It was somebody big.
Yeah, like we've already talked about, but just the people that appreciated it right from the start. If you go through just like many victims of incest, like we've already said, Cheryl Lee talks about just how many people just approached her. And that's just I don't know. I think that people started to reevaluate and see how that's a testament to like the raw, like truth he was aiming for, the emotion of it all.
Yeah.
And even if it's a hard watch, I think what I was saying before, just the way it takes this thing that should be intangible or you're unable to experience, and he kind of makes it tangible.
Yeah,
which is wicked.
And another piece of the puzzle around its kind of reevaluation, or at least people becoming excited about it again, I guess I should say, was the mythology around its deleted material. Like fans always knew, for a long time, fans knew that Lynch had shot all this extra footage, like over 5 hours of footage, and that tons of series regulars had filmed scenes that never made the cut. And for years, there were rumors of a longer version of this film, but Lynch denied that he would ever release it. Like he released his director's cut in theaters. And then behind the scenes, there was plenty of drama surrounding that footage. New Line considered including deleted scenes on a 2002 DVD, but the deal ended up collapsing. Now, depending on who you ask, either it fell apart over rights issues with the French distributor MK2, or New Line just didn't want to pay the $100,000 that Lynch said that he would need to edit and finish the footage. And then in 2008, the financial crisis hit, MK2 backed off, and fans just sort of figured that the material was lost forever. But then in 2014, it finally happened. Lynch, MK2, and CBS Home Entertainment came together for the Blu-ray box set, and the deleted scenes were released as a 90-minute standalone feature called Twin Peaks: The Missing Pieces. Now, this is not any kind of like director's cut. It's more like a collection of vignettes. But it was kind of a revelation. It was the first time most people were seeing any of this footage. Suddenly, all of those familiar faces that had been cut out of the theatrical version were back. Like we could watch them. And The Missing Pieces was a real treat for Twin Peaks fans. I remember when it came out. I bought that Blu-ray set when it came out. And a lot of, although not all of the material is considered semi-canon, some of it does get referenced later on, both in the Secret History of Twin Peaks and in The Return. And like I said, it's not, Lynch never intended this to be like a director's cut, but it does expand on the world in some kind of fascinating ways. Like in these Missing Pieces, if you've seen them, or if you haven't seen them, you get more FBI business with Gordon, Albert, and Cooper bouncing off each other, plus a few extra Chet Desmond bits, like there's that fight scene with the sheriff that got cut. That's kind of funny, but pointless. It shouldn't have been in the film. There's a little more David Bowie as Philip Jeffries, including glimpses of his distressing time in Buenos Aires, which is my favorite part of the Missing Pieces, actually. I think it's really fun to watch. You also get extended Twin Peaks town life. You get moments with Lucy and Andy and Sheriff Truman and Pete arguing with the old guy from the bank about the size of 2x4s. You get Norma and Ed. You get Jacoby, being Jacoby. And then on the Palmer front, there are a few added family moments that make the house feel even heavier, and a few sequences that we know from the theatrical cut, like the pink room and the red room, are stretched out, giving them a slightly different rhythm. So some of these are extended sequences that we already get in the film. And I think not all of it works. A lot of it feels like digressions, but seeing it, I think, reframes the original film as a deliberate focus choice to keep the spotlight on Laura. Like, to me, watching it is like, oh, they did the right thing. The release, though, of that footage sparked a whole new wave of fan activity. Some people began creating their own extended cuts of Fire Walk with Me by stitching the deleted material back in. There's a few of these out there, but the most famous of these is the so-called Blue Rose cuts. It has about an hour of the 90 minutes cut back into it. It is by no means Lynch approved. It is 100% a bootleg. It is unauthorized. Lynch has been very clear that he prefers the focus to stay on Laura. But projects like that just kind of show how deeply fans had become invested in exploring every corner of this story. Did you guys have a chance to watch The Missing Pieces? Do you think those extra scenes added something essential, or did they just kind of dilute the focus?
I watched The Missing Pieces. I didn't. Unfortunately, I ran out of time for the Blue Rose cut. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a lot of stuff that it hit the floor with good reason. Of just kind of like, yeah, if your purpose is to focus on Laura, then yeah, we don't
It
need
bogs
this.
it down.
Yeah.
Like you said, he made the movie he needed to make or meant to make. I think, it's cool to see all the people again, but it's unnecessary and it just would take. I don't personally, a lot of the stuff that was like featuring goofier characters or like playfulness felt really out of place after I've seen the whole movie. Like
Right.
I was just like, no, that this should not be here. And
Yeah.
You're just doing fan service by having them, which I get on one hand. I feel like the movie is still fan service or like not fan service, I guess, but it is made for fans of Twin Peaks. It feels like no matter
Yeah.
what you do, but yeah, you don't want it to take away. I think I said it earlier. It just would kind of disrespect the point of the story to have some of this stuff. If there was one scene from The Missing Pieces that I could add back in that I actually did like, was the one with Laura and Donna at her house with her parents come in and her mom brings the muffins and the dad reads that poem to
Where she
Laura
starts
or whatever.
smoking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something about that scene. I thought that was a really good scene, and it kind of, I don't know. It just made you feel for her a little bit more again and seeing what she wishes she could have and does not have.
Yeah, you see the warmth that she's getting from Doc Hayward,
Yeah.
that fatherly figure, and you also know why she refers to herself as the muffin later on in the pink room, because she does reference that. And if you hadn't seen that scene, then you wouldn't know why did she just call herself the muffin. And I still don't know why she refers to herself as a muffin.
Who knows? Gobble gobble. Um, I did like also seeing more. I wouldn't have put it back in, but the stuff with Bobby and the one scene with Dr. Jacoby, I felt like would even add even more to how the men in her life just keep. She's so put upon by these people, like she's like just they keep demanding of her and forcing things on her, and there's like just it's just sad, and it makes you just hate all the men of Twin Peaks almost. You kind of hate all those dudes. But it's if you the Blue Rose cut stuff is an interesting experiment. And if you're a
Did you
super
watch it?
fan of yeah. And if you're a super fan of Twin Peaks, I think it's probably cool to watch at least once, but it's also
Yeah.
like 3 hours and it's a lot. So
It's a lot. It's 3 hours and 15 minutes long, and I agree. I think it's a fascinating kind of thought experiment, and it's well done. The guy who edited it, he goes by the pseudonym Agent Sam Stanley, a reference to the Kiefer Sutherland character. But I think he did a pretty good job. I think there are a few rough spots. Like I think the way the Philip Jeffries footage is worked in feels a little clunky, but overall, it's a cool piece of fan editing. And I definitely would not call it essential viewing. I think it is for diehards only. I think Fire Walk with Me is the only really essential thing you need to watch, although The Missing Pieces is really cool to see, especially the way that Lynch cuts them together. It's entertaining. And it's cool to see these characters and see what they might have been up to as sort of like while the events of the film were happening, almost like an alternative, like this is what else is going on in Twin Peaks. But when you edit them into the film, just tonally, it doesn't work. It's like tonal whiplash. So it can be a little jarring. So it is cool to see. I'm glad I saw it. I'm glad I have the chance to see it because I think it's neat, but I definitely don't think it should be anyone's preferred way to watch the film at all.
I also did like the scene with Chester and Stanley, like where he's like, "Are you speaking in code?" And he's like, "No, I'm speaking plainly, and I mean exactly what I say."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Lynch, that's David talking to us."
Yeah. Well, then, of course, we've also got Twin Peaks: The Return. Now, Lynch himself said that Fire Walk with Me was essential to understanding the revival, the new series. And sure enough, characters like Philip Jeffries and the Woodsman, who were first introduced here, end up playing huge roles in The Return. What originally seemed like a strange, alienating tour was retroactively revealed as the key to the entire Twin Peaks universe. So Fire Walk with Me very much matters.
Hey, look, he was playing 4D chess like the whole time. That
Yep.
was it. I don't know. It also, I assume, is going to help make this movie like that seems like it's not a part of the bigger universe. Yeah, like well, like you said, it's gonna
link them all together.
exactly. You know what's crazy is also I saw in kind of unrelated, I guess, but in NME music publication ranked Badalamenti's score here in 2011 as the greatest film score in history.
Wow.
Yeah, not great, but the greatest.
Wow. I mean, it is great. I don't know if I'd put it that high, but it is pretty great.
That's what a few decades of critical reevaluation will do for you.
Well, hey, that score was winning awards from the get-go.
Yeah, that's true. I can't wait till people find this podcast in 40 years when we're almost dead.
Well, it's also worth noting that Mark Frost did rejoin the fold of Twin Peaks once the revival came around. He expanded the mythology of the show in his novels, The Secret History of Twin Peaks, and also in The Final Dossier. If you're wanting to watch this along with us and like watch The Return with us, watch The Secret History of Twin Peaks before you watch The Return. Read The Final Dossier after. That's how it was intended, because The Final Dossier will spoil some stuff from The Return. Now, those books, obviously, they don't come directly from Lynch, but they give a parallel framework for understanding how the show's history and lore evolved. And taken together, Frost's novels and Lynch's revival recenter Fire Walk with Me as a crucial bridge between the original series and this expanded universe. And today, the film pops up on Best of the 90s lists all the time. In 2022, Sight and Sound Critics Poll ranked it above Raiders of the Lost Ark and tied it with Brief Encounter. That is, Sight and Sound only does that once a decade, so this is the most recent version of that poll. IGN even named it one of the best horror films ever made. And the movie that once drew boos at Cannes is now celebrated as one of Lynch's most important works. So yeah, I mean, what started as barbed wire wrapped in cherry pie, as Lynch put it, has ended up as one of the defining achievements of his career.
I did find in Bullet magazine, their 2012 Winter Surreal issue, not sure if you saw this, they'll sometimes ask actors, apparently, to reconnect with a role that they played and write something about it. And they actually reached out to Cheryl Lee to make contact with the ghost of Laura Palmer, quote
Interesting.
unquote.
Okay.
And so she did, and she wrote a poem in there for Laura. And I have it here. You're welcome. Dear Laura, 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 a ghost of me you are. For one who did not want to live, you're never very far. As a soul lost deep in trouble, you gave my art a name, but if I did it all again, I might not do it quite the same. Pulled down from heaven's ethers, you arrived to share my life. I instilled your depth with purpose before you left me with your knife. I take it out from time to time, run my fingers down the smooth blade. Is my destiny the same as yours, or do I just simply fade? My dear, sweet Laura, my doorway into death, alive and yet not living in this play, I am your guest. I offered my whole self in honor of your life, and in exchange was tricked quite well when you rewrote my rights. Fair you say, do I not agree? Your fame, after all, did rub off on me. It's not what I wanted, though. Had I known, I just longed for a place and a space of my own. But you, my friend, had different plans for my life. You stepped in out of nowhere and won't leave other sight. I sit alone now on this journey of ours, caught somewhere between my earth and your stars.
That's actually is lovely for one thing. But that book, Laura's Ghost, that I mentioned earlier, Cheryl Lee writes the foreword to that, and she actually starts her foreword with that poem.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and then she writes a little bit more after that. But yeah, that's how the book starts, is actually with that. So it's a really fantastic book. I haven't read all of it yet, but I'm working my way through it. Well, that's it, guys. That's the strange, messy, fascinating story of Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me, a movie that was booed at Cannes, bombed at the box office, and trashed by critics, but has since become one of David Lynch's most important works, and a cornerstone of the entire Twin Peaks mythology.
Look at this, like a fine wine. Just needed to, just age a little bit there. Needed time to breathe.
Todd just doesn't like wine.
Yeah, that's it. That's what's going on. You mentioned like Lynch talking about that he felt bad that it did no business and that a lot of people hate the film, but he always seems to have said he really liked it. He was still proud.
Oh yeah, he loves it,
even though it had a lot of baggage with it, I think is how he put it. But he even became more philosophical in like one interview I saw. He said the collective consciousness changes and people come around Look at Van Gogh. The guy could not sell one painting, and now nobody can afford them. So take that. It just seems like the worst ever movie made, critics.
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing, I think.
He did. He definitely knew what he was doing. I mean, for Lynch, it was never about pleasing fans or tying up loose ends from the show. It was always about Laura Palmer. It was about giving her a voice and showing her pain and refusing to let her be remembered only as the homecoming queen wrapped in plastic. And in the process, he made a film that was way ahead of its time. I mean, it was too raw and too strange for 1992, but one that resonates more and more with each passing year. And I think it's important. I think it's like, Gary, you said that it's become one of your favorite, or maybe your favorite David Lynch movie so far that we've discussed. And honestly, after watching it multiple times over the last few weeks, and I'd seen this movie quite a few times before, but really like sitting with it this time and sitting with my thoughts on it, I think it's in the David Lynch rankings, I think it's a lot higher now than even it used to be. Probably because I watched it in such close proximity to Twin Peaks and digging into Twin Peaks in a way that I never have before. Because I've watched all of Twin Peaks, but this is the first time that I've like dug into it with the level that we did. So I think I had an even greater appreciation for what he's trying to do here.
I feel like I went hard on it with saying it would be my favorite. That's tough. I don't know. Like, has it made me feel the most so far? Maybe. Yeah. Maybe out of all of them. But God, it's not one I'm gonna just throw for comfort.
Yeah. Well, it's like the Elephant Man's that way too. The Elephant Man is wonderful and another very deeply empathetic film, but it's not like one that I just want to throw on at any time because it's kind of a bummer. Like it's kind of a downer.
Right.
That's it for Fire Walk with Me. Next time here on Cinema Shock, we are staying with Lynch as our Between Two Worlds series continues. We'll be digging into Lost Highway, Lynch's fractured neo-noir about murder, jealousy, and identity that bends reality until it snaps. And until then, if you've enjoyed this episode, remember that you can dive into our entire Twin Peaks watch-along series, Fire Shock with Me, over on Cinema Shock Plus. That's every single episode of the show, every twist, every bit of mystery and mythology. We unpack them as best we can. You can find it over there on cinemashock.net/plus. You also get all kinds of stuff like an extended version of this episode or all of our episodes dating all the way back to our very first David Lynch series, where you get all kinds of bonus special features, like further viewing, where we give you our picks for double features, and you get access to our Cinema Shock exclusive Discord server, all that stuff. So cinemashock.net/plus. Join if you feel like it. We would very much appreciate it, especially if you're a fan of David Lynch and a fan of Twin Peaks, because there's a lot of Twin Peaks shit on that right now. That's all we got for this one, fellas. You guys want to let our listeners know where you can be found on the interweb?
I am at This Is Gary Horn on all the stuff.
If you happen to be a fan of Star Trek, come check out my show, Computer Resume Podcast. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts, and on the socials at Computer Resume. And I'm at Mr. Todd A. Davis on all the things.
I'm at Justin_Bishop on most of the things. You can find the show at cinemashock.net or cinema_shock on most social media. Find us on Discord, where anyone's free to join. But if you are a Cinema Shock Plus subscriber, you've got a free Cinema Shock Plus lounge on there where you can hang out with other members. It's really fun. We're going to be posting a bunch of Twin Peaks shit in there, a bunch of David Lynch shit in there over the coming weeks. And I think that's it for today, fellas. Until next time.
May the wings of liberty never lose a feather.
And be excellent to each other.
Johnny is real. He's had the keys since I was 12.
Wow. Just feels dark for some reason.
Yeah. It's not like I could just wave you on from that one. I'm just like, all right. Yeah.
Oh, I don't like Johnny anymore.
Yeah.